This is the USS Gerald R Ford, the world's most expensive and technologically advanced aircraft carrier. For the U.S. military, this sailing beast is a symbol of its strength upon the waters and a much-needed reminder for Russia, China, and other aggressors to curtail their excesses. Join us in today's video as we don our life jackets and reveal all the amazing features of this gigantic aircraft carrier. How long did it take to build? How much did it cost? And what are its features? Let's dive in and find out together. A typical US 100,000-ton aircraft carrier takes 5 years to build, but so far, the development process of the USS Gerald R Ford has been on for nearly 2 decades, and officials say it won't be ready for active combat until later this year. Construction began in August 2005 when Huntington Ingalls Industries, a spin-off of Northrop Grumman, held a ceremonial steel cutting event. The plan was to deliver this new generation amphibious assault ship to the U.S. Navy by 2015. However, the project was delayed by huge cost overruns and severe technical issues. By 2007, the U.S. Navy had spent over $1 billion on the warship's paperwork and general design. The Ford's design template, on the other hand, had 19,000 alterations made to it, contributing to the sluggish production process. Eventually, President Donald Trump's helicopter docked on flight deck on July 22, 2017, as he officially commissioned the ship. "May God bless and guide this warship and all who shall sail in her," Trump said. Former President Gerald R Ford, whom the ship was named after, died in December 2006 while the carrier was still in production. So consequently, his daughter Susan Elizabeth Ford was chosen to baptize the ship in front of over 20,000 people as part of the ceremony. I'm honored to give the command. Officers and crew of the United States Gerald R Ford, man our ship and bring her to life. In response to that order, naval officers aboard the ship took up positions to render their signature salute. A U.S. flag was hoisted to full mast, and sounds of sirens filled the air. As the ship's godmother or sponsor, Elizabeth helped design the crest, and she remains a permanent member of the ship's crew. But despite this grand standing ceremony, the Ford was plagued with several problems. About 9,000 technical issues at the time, and this meant that the USS Gerald R Ford would spend a few more years on the treatment table. Named after the 38th President of the United States, the USS Gerald Ford measures 1,106 feet, or about the size of 3 standard football pitches in length and 250 feet wide. This lavish space is big enough to house 25 decks, 4,500 crew members, and 75 aircraft. In addition, it displaces 100,000 tons and has a height of 256 feet. Essentially, the Gerald R Ford can carry enough food and necessary supplies to sustain its crew members for more than 3 months. Also, sailors aboard the USS Gerald R Ford will benefit from the world-class infrastructures that are installed on it, including quieter sleeping quarters, numerous recreation facilities, excellent gyms, and better air conditioning. Before we continue our discussion, if you've made it this far, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Also comment "I subbed" down below for a chance to get a free shout out in our next video. The USS Gerald R Ford is the single most expensive item owned by the U.S. military, and as you would imagine, it is the most costly military asset in the world as well. Initially, the Navy predicted that the total cost for the Gerald R Ford wouldn't exceed $10 billion, but at the completion of the project, the cost for the dual-band radar, arresting gears, and electronic catapult system had risen above the initial estimate by over 100%. In the end, the USS Gerald R Ford cost twice as much as the USS George H.W. Bush did. It's also 5 times more expensive than the B-2 bomber. At over $600 million, the ordnance is well equipped with a close-in weapon system, automatic radar-based multiple-barrel cannon that can fire 4,500 rounds a minute, dual-band radar, electromagnetic catapults, and next-generation arresting gear systems. The USS Gerald R Ford required almost 50 million man-hours to be completed. Despite the Navy's decision to forego ideas for a dynamic armor protection and an additional waste disposal system, the final cost was approximately 22 to 30% more than the initial budget. And this doesn't include the cost of guided missile cruisers and destroyers, which would escort the carrier during combat operations. The Ford's state-of-the-art advanced arresting gear is a notable feature that you wouldn't find on any other US-owned aircraft carrier. Before now, the U.S. Navy used the traditional Mark VII hydraulic arresting gear to land aircraft. However, times are set to change with the arrival of the Ford, which uses an electric turbine engine and a water twister to catch aircraft from the sky to its 5-acre flight deck. The USS Gerald R Ford will fly 30% more sorties than any other U.S.-owned warship, and its dual-band radar will feature a volume search and multifunctional radar designed for long-range surveillance activities, missile communications, and air traffic control. These technologies were initially developed for the Zumwalt-class destroyer ships, but they will be helping the Ford nuclear carrier to identify potential air and land-based threats. The U.S. Navy opted to install a rather complicated electromagnetic aircraft launch system, EMAL, on the ship, despite strong criticisms from different angles. In comparison to the good old steam catapult launcher, this new system is expected to speed up the launch aircraft faster than any other warship in the world. However, President Donald Trump frowned at this innovation, saying, "You have to be Albert Einstein to really work it properly." And to be fair to Trump, the EMAL system is one of those things that slowed down this project. But at last, the engineers were able to resolve the issues and install a fully functional EMAL system, without the help of Albert Einstein, of course. The Ford has an enormous hangar bay where aircraft and other military equipment are stored when they are not in use. This vast space is also home to a statue of President Gerald R Ford. Interestingly, Ford served as a navigation officer on the USS Monterey during World War II, some 3 decades before he became president. Crew members say Ford showed heroic instincts on one occasion to save the ship during a bad storm. Additionally, this sea-based assault machine is equipped with short-range anti-missile and anti-aircraft systems like Sea Sparrows and rolling airframe missiles, as well as 23 new or modified technologies. The entire task distribution and aircraft arrangement process is automated, but there's a manual backup option called the Ouija board. This board is lined with signed dollar notes collected from presidents and other dignitaries during their visits to the ship. Currently, the most notable piece of collection on the board is the dollar bill signed by President Donald Trump in 2017. 2 nuclear reactors, each generating 700 megawatts, are at the heart of the USS Gerald R Ford. Together, they cost over $1 billion and power 4 shafts, which drive the propellers that help this ship reach a top speed of 30 knots per hour. Interestingly, these nuclear reactors are designed to supply power to this warship for 20 years without refueling, and considering that the aircraft carrier will reportedly be in active service for 50 years, the U.S. Navy might only have to refuel it 2 times during its lifespan. All these high-tech upgrades mean the USS Gerald R Ford will require less maintenance and fewer crew members to function at full capacity. During a shock trial experiment in 2021, the U.S. Navy put its most prized asset through a stern test to determine the level of its survivability. 3 40,000-pound bombs were unleashed on the Ford from under the sea. The blast was recorded at 3.9 magnitude earthquake. However, Captain Paul Lanzalota confirmed that the aircraft carrier pretty much withstood the shock without suffering any significant casualties. From a severity standpoint, I like to say we had 0 catastrophic failures on the ship, 0 situations where we had flooding, 0 fires, he said. All that is pretty significant. With over 15 years and $13 billion expended on production, the greatest warship in America's fighting history will be ready to set sail later this year as a full-fledged battle-ready ship. And with everything that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are up to, the U.S. Navy will certainly not run out of options when it comes to where and how to deploy this mighty aircraft carrier. What's your opinion about the USS Gerald R Ford? Is it worth the price? Let us know in the comments section. And be sure to check out this video over here.